West. Let's start with the Georgia Bulldogs. Do you think the Georgia Bulldogs are good enough this season to win a national championship?
Well, they'll certainly have the opportunity to prove that, and they're closing that gap by the minute. Extremely good defense. Their front seven is among the best in the country, particularly at the linebacker position. They run a 3-4 defense that's also a hybrid 4-3. They go back and forth to that, which means that they have 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, but then will adjust pre-snap and go to 4 down defensive linemen and only 3 linebackers, which is a former offensive lineman, I can assure you, causes a lot of problems with recognition, which is why they do such a good job of penetrating and get lost yardage plays, because they cause confusion. But they can line up straight up and come at you. The running game is among the nation's best, playing behind what I think would be, at the end of the year, the nation's best offensive line unit, which would win the Joe Moore Award. They've got some depth at the running back. They've got a true freshman quarterback that's efficient with the football and does a really nice job protecting it. I think Georgia is a complete team in all 3 phases, and I think all of us are kind of keeping our fingers crossed that both them and Alabama stay undefeated heading into the SEC championship game.
You know, that's really what we're looking at with the SEC, although Georgia has at least a trip to Auburn next up. That would be next weekend, and then obviously trying to get through the final part of the schedule before the SEC title game. But as you just said, there's a bit of a carbon copy going on because Georgia's defense is really the strength of this team. Are they an Alabama elite-esque defense in your mind?
They're getting there. They're not there yet, but they're well on their way. And I think what's most notable about that is, especially for Alabama, they have been consistent. They do it year in and year out. They're in the tops, if not the tops, not only in their own conference, but across the country. And if you look right now, Alabama's number 1 in total defense, and Georgia's number 2, very closely behind them. Remember, Alabama had a lot of its defensive success because of Kirby Smart, so they're built extremely similarly. They have physical defensive linemen. They have athletic and physical linebackers that can run. They have DBs that can pattern match and be able to get in hip or run in phase, if you will, with wide receivers. So they do a nice job on that side of the ball. And you add Mel Tucker to that mix, it's a good combination with what those two have been able to come up with on the defensive side of the ball. But it really is Georgia's kind of the light version of Alabama in the East, and I think it's being built in the exact same ways. Good defense that can stop the run, a run-based offense that can control the line of scrimmage, and even going back to last year with Jalen Hurts when Alabama made it to the national championship game with a true freshman quarterback, it looks like Georgia has a chance to do the same with Jake Fromm, who is playing very, very well protecting the football, but they're not relying on him to be able to beat teams with his arms. That may change. I would think that as the season progresses, nobody's going to be able to allow Georgia to run the football like they did on Florida a week ago. I think they're going to try and make Jake Fromm beat them, and he only threw 7 passes last week, so that's what I'm expecting to see from South Carolina. But going back to what you asked me about their defense, I think it's on par and catching up, but Alabama's still the cream of the crop in the Southeast Conference.
Aaron Taylor has Georgia as they take on South Carolina, 3:30 Eastern time coming up this weekend of the SEC on CBS, kicking off their doubleheader. LSU, Alabama in the late game. When the college football playoff rankings come out later on tonight, everybody will be wondering, where does Ohio State stand next to Oklahoma? Oklahoma won at the Horseshoe, but Ohio State's coming off one of the most impressive wins of the season. Who would you stack higher? Who would you rank higher? Who's the better team in your mind between Ohio State and Oklahoma?
Well, this is interesting, and I think this is going to be at the heart of the discussion of not only tonight's college football playoff pool, but as we move down the season, is does head-to-head competition matter? Does on-field performance matter? Because without question, I think Ohio State's win over Penn State certainly passes the eye test. They looked extremely impressive, fixed all the issues that they had in the passing game, if you will, in their loss to Oklahoma. But how do you rank a team being Ohio State with 1 loss over an Oklahoma team that beat you earlier in the year in good faith? And I think we've already seen how some of the AP voters have struggled with that, given that Ohio State is 3rd and Oklahoma is 8th. So they've already in the AP have Ohio State, who lost to a team ahead of a team that beat them. And I don't think at this point the College Football Playoff Committee could care where teams are ranked. But I do know that they value strength of schedule and head-to-head competition as 2 of the 4 criteria that they base the rankings on. So I would expect Oklahoma, shockingly, to be ahead of Ohio State, because the College Football Playoff Committee has proven to us that they're not afraid to kind of get off script, if you will, and do and value things differently than what is the college football narrative.
Before I let you go, I got 2 questions to finish this thing off. Number 1, what was your favorite costume you wore growing up on Halloween? Number 2, what is Aaron Taylor's favorite candy to receive on Halloween?
Okay, so when I was 9 years old, Mama went to the fabric store, got some fabric and a stencil pattern for an E.T. costume.
Oh.
She even took one of those pen lights and sewed it into the finger so I could put it through, and it glowed.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was unbelievable. I've got a picture. I should probably dig that out if I can, or have my wife do it because she's back at home, and take a picture and tweet it out. It was epic. And I didn't win the costume contest in my elementary school, so I'm still a little bit bitter about that.
Wow, that's amazing. The only E.T. ever that could pancake block.
You know what I'm saying? I would have bought it. And I think as far as candy goes, man, Snickers, without question, is hands down the best candy bar that's ever been invented. I'll put that in the octagon with any other candy.
So is it guaranteed king size? Like, do the Taylors hand out the king size Snickers then on Halloween?
Well, come on, D.A. You know I'm a fat kid. I definitely go to Costco and get the jumbo size candy bar. I am that guy. I am that family. No question.
Aaron Taylor joining us here on the show, lead college football analyst, CBS Sports Network. He's going to be on the call Saturday. First game of the SEC on CBS doubleheader. South Carolina taking on Georgia, 3:30 Eastern time. And then following the game, LSU, Alabama in prime time. Keep my buddy Carter Blackburn under wraps, buddy, on a Halloween weekend. And we'll talk to you again, man.
Thanks, D.A.